In this episode, we talk about Australia attempting to ban social media for children younger than 16 years old. We also talk about Rahul Gandhi once again accusing the government of protecting the Adani group. But first, we talk about the Sambhal controversy. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On Sunday around 7 a.m., a team of 7 people entered the famous Jama Masjid Mosque in UP's Sambhal district. This team of 7 people was there to conduct a survey which was mandated by the district court. Now, shortly after the team entered the mosque, clashes erupted in the area which later resulted in the death of 4 people, including a 19-year-old boy who passed away because of gunshot wounds. So far, a total of 7 FIRs have been lodged against 6 named and more than 2,000 unnamed individuals. To understand what exactly led to these clashes and what this survey was about, the Indian Express's national legal editor, Apurva Vishwanath, joins us.
So this was supposed to be the second leg of a court-mandated survey. It was led by the Advocate Commissioner. You could prominently see lawyer Vishnu Jain, who has been at the forefront of several of these mosque issues in India now, whether it is Gyanvapi or Mathura or the Bodhshala in Madhya Pradesh. So that's basically what set off the violence that happened in Sambhal that day.
She says a week before this, on a Tuesday afternoon, Vishnu Jain had filed a plea before the district court in Sambhal asking for the right to access the mosque.
And the claim is part of that familiar playbook we've seen, that this mosque was built on the site of a Hindu temple and Hindu devotees have a right to worship. So this is how they file a civil suit. And essentially, when you're filing a civil suit, what you do is sort of make these averments. These are stating your positions and they don't necessarily have to be facts, right? That's for the court to determine. It's different when you look at what happens in a criminal case, or you go to the court and file a writ petition and things like that. So in a civil suit, you make these averments, the court has to see whether there is a probability of your averments being true, right? And in that case, they allow the trial. The court doesn't have to go into the veracity of these statements. Like the court doesn't have to say what you're saying is true or false. That is what the trial should determine.
So the court at this point is not fact-checking.
Yes, it's not fact-checking. So it just says that this suit is maintainable. So they will see if the petitioner at best has a cause of action. He has a right that he's seeking to remedy. So that's it. So this happened on Tuesday around 1:30. The petition was filed. Interestingly, the petition is taken up for hearing and heard in the next 3 hours. And the judge, this is Judge Aditya Singh, who is a civil division junior magistrate, he says that a survey must be conducted and a report must be submitted to his court before 29th of November. So let's say the hearing concludes and about 7:30 that same day, there is that first leg of the survey. Survey is essentially, the team going and looking around and submitting a report to the court. So in the copy of the petition, the averments, they do state that there is some inscription or something that points to the fact that this was a Hindu temple in the architecture or as a scripture somewhere before the mosque was built. So that's probably what they went to look for. So that happens. But what's interesting is the breakneck speed at which all of this happens. Like I said, this is the same playbook that happened in Gyanvapi, Mathura and Bodhshala, but not at this speed even there. They tried, but it didn't happen. There were some checks and balances. They gave the Muslim side some time to go to the High Court and, seek a stay, go to the Supreme Court and seek a stay. It's a completely different matter that none of our higher courts stayed the actions, whether in Gyanvapi or in Mathura. But at least there was that attempt. Here what happened in Sambhal was, there's also this context that the UP by-elections were going on and the survey happens the same day.
And Apurva, in the past, when we have spoken about Gyanvapi or the Mathura case, we have talked about the Places of Worship Act. And just for our listeners, the Places of Worship Act basically prohibits the changing of the character of any place of worship from what it was on the 15th of August, 1947. Meaning that if a place was a mosque on that day, then it will remain a mosque. And if it's a temple, it will remain a temple. So can you tell us why, despite this law, despite the Places of Worship Act prohibiting this, the courts continue to allow these surveys?
So that's the interesting bit. There is a 1991 legislation that prohibits any sort of such title disputes so that we don't fall into the ominous steps of what happened in Babri. The 1991 law, of course, kept the Babri Masjid dispute out of the purview of this law because that was already sub judice, right? And a court was seized of this issue by then. But for the rest of the country, the law clearly states that whatever was the nature of that place of worship on 15th of August 1947, it would continue to be that. So in a sense, it was acknowledge the history and move on. But what happened when the Gyanvapi issue came up first, this was just a few months after the Ayodhya verdict came from the Supreme Court, the temple was being built. And in the Gyanvapi dispute, the judge allowed this civil suit. And even before the judge could give his sort of reasons to why this was being allowed, the petitioners did come to the High Court and the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, there is this one curious observation by the bench at that time, which was headed by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. He says that, of course, the law prohibits changing the nature, but does the law permit an inquiry into what was the nature on 15th August 1947, right? Because a civil suit is essentially an inquiry, as in you go back and ascertain the facts. So he said, maybe the civil suit can just do that. It was almost as if the judge was thinking aloud, but that one observation, which actually doesn't even make it to the order, is the sum of all legal basis for judges to allow such civil suits now. So what judges say is this does not fall under the purview of the 1991 law because we are only looking at what it was on 15th of August 1947. So, like in the Gyanvapi case, the petitioners have said that at the time of independence, they did have some access to the mosque, that prayers were being offered there, so which is why they should get access. The same goes in Mathura. So these are all disputed facts now. They will have to call evidence to the table and look at these issues. But that's a key legal opening, which has led to this barrage of petitions everywhere.
Okay, so the court in the case that you mentioned had observed, and this is not something that was there in the final judgment, but what it said was that, listen, we are not talking about changing the character of the place. We are only making an inquiry into what things were like back then. But aren't the courts looking at what's going on right now in the sense that even though you're talking about how things were, there is an active movement to change the religious character of these places, and that's what we've seen happen in previous cases as well. Could you talk about what attempts have been made to sort of challenge that or bring that to the attention of the courts?
No, you're right. So this is, of course, one instance where we can't only talk in the framework of this is legal and this is not legal and this is what the court said and the court didn't say. There is, of course, a larger political context for this. While the RSS keeps saying that after Ayodhya, that they will not make a claim for Kashi and Mathura, what's happening on ground is completely different. Vishnu Shankar Jain, the advocate, we've done detailed profiles of both the father and son. But the son, who is seen in all of these visuals coming from Sambhal, is a standing counsel of the Uttar Pradesh government. And every case that is filed there has members of, say the local VHP, or like, for example, in Sambhal, there's a local Mahant who is one of the petitioners. So it's, of course, the politics that's playing out. The fact that they get this case is heard the same day as it was filed, it's incredibly surprising. That's not how it should have been done. We're not looking at just regular legal processes. What we are seeing is the weaponization of law.
And next we talk about the concerns around social media. Yesterday, Australia's House of Representatives passed a bill that would ban children under the age of 16 from using social media. The bill, which got support from all major political parties, has now been sent to the Senate for final approval. Under the proposed law, platforms such as TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, X and Instagram could face fines of up to 50 million Australian dollars for systematic failures to prevent children from creating accounts. If the bill becomes law this week, these platforms will have 1 year to implement the age restrictions before penalties are enforced. To talk about the concerns and the harmful effects of social media that led to this law being proposed, my colleague Ichha Sharma speaks to the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt in this segment.
So, Anona, when discussing children's access to social media and its effects on them, you write about the problematic behavior that adults are particularly worried about. Can you begin by talking a bit about what this kind of behavior is?
So when we refer to problematic social use, I was talking about a study which emerged from WHO Europe region. And they said that this problematic social media use has increased from 7% to 11%, if I'm not wrong. But the basic thing is that it is on the rise. And when we talk about problematic social use, it means basically children being unable to control their use of social media, experiencing withdrawal-like symptoms when they have to stop using it. They're neglecting other activities and spending, hours and hours every day on social media platform. So this is something that is on the rise, and we see problematic social media use higher among, girls than among boys. That is what we know so far about it.
Right, and when we talk about neglecting something important or experiencing withdrawal-like symptoms, one could argue that this happens with television or video games as well. In what way is social media different?
So not just television and games, I think even when the first novels came up, there was this anxiety about, this will lead to problems. TV has been linked with, poor eyesight or violence and things like that. So Jonathan Haidt is one of the experts on this, social media use. And his argument is that, so far we have not seen any evidence that has linked over the years use of, say, television or playing these multiplayer games, etc., to, increase in violence or increase in mental health issues or any such thing. However, he says that there is a clear pattern that exists that about 2015 or so onwards, there has been a sharp decline in mental well-being in children and teenagers. And this is also the exact time when there was an increase in social media platforms. Facebook was coming up, Instagram was coming up in a big way. And also, this decline in mental health did not happen in one country particularly. It was across the globe. So he argues that without any other phenomenon to explain this sudden dip in mental health of children, it seems to be, social media platforms that has been doing it.
Also, Nona, when we talk about being addicted or overusing social media, this is something many adults do as well. You often find someone constantly opening Instagram or Twitter and not being able to concentrate on work. So in what way are children more vulnerable to this?
So problematic social media use is prevalent even in adults. It's not that it doesn't happen, but this whole argument for a ban in children or teenagers has been because the argument is that, they do not have a fully developed brain. The brain develops until the age of about 25 years. So they are still young. They do not have the capacity to make very good and rational decisions, and they do not have the willpower to stay off the platform. So at this point, if, the social media is influencing them, it's showing them advertisements and things like that, they're much more likely to get influenced than an adult, and which is why the ban focuses on children and teenagers.
Right. And when we speak of digital media protection, the biggest challenge is usually to verify a user's age. So what challenges are associated with verifying users' age on social media platforms, and what methods have been suggested or tested in Australia for age verification?
So when you have to verify the age on social media, so far, most, platforms would just ask for your age. You have to give your date of birth, or they would ask whether you're 18 or, 13 or whatever the age limit. But that is not a very effective way of keeping people off the platform because, that people can just lie about their age. So, of course, there are now websites that are trying to, put in place mechanisms such as verifying this age by either a government issued ID or, credit card details that you provide based on that. Otherwise, they have methods of, facial recognition that can tell you what the approximate age of the person is. And in case they are flagged as a minor, then, you ask them for their ID. So these are certain things that are being tried by various social media companies in Australia. And this has been mentioned in the report prepared by French. But I mean, the final details are yet to emerge, but these are some measures that could be taken. The only downside is, people can use VPN to just show that they are not from Australia, thereby circumventing the ban. So these are challenges that will have to be discussed when such a law comes in.
Right. And what kind of potential effects could this legislation have on social media companies operating in Australia?
So they have to put in place mechanisms to verify the age. And of course, the social media companies wouldn't want to do that because you are cutting into their user base. So those are the challenges that come with this law, but that is yet to be seen what happens with the companies.
And also, Anonna, how should stakeholders such as policymakers, companies and caregivers approach children's use of social media?
So when it comes to social media use, parents and the immediate caregivers play a very important role because, even without the law, they can restrict the access at home for the children. So it is very essential that the families come together and create a social media plan. But it is also important that the parents also stick to that plan. It's not just for the children because they have to emulate that behavior. Another important thing which we spoke to experts and they said is to prepare a engaging environment. So you should have interactions with, other children of the same age, have games or, activities planned out because children and teenagers, they would not sit idle and you cannot have that time be filled with social media. So, you should plan out other activities. Then one of the other important things that parents can do is have a conversation about social media use. What can be done? What cannot be done? What is a good thing that, because social media also has its positive, it connects you to people. So, just a guideline on how to beneficially use social media and other services on the internet. That is a conversation that parents should have with their children. Then when it comes to policymakers, of course, similar to Australia, there could be other, legislations that are brought in to regulate who has access to social media, what kind of content they have access to. Then there should be more research on how social media use impacts children. What are the long-term consequences of this entire generation of people being raised with a lot of social media use? Those are the things that they have to do. And of course, companies have to also, become more transparent and share their data with the government and the agencies that are studying the problem and trying to, come up with public health measures to help sort that out.
And next we talk about the Adani controversy. Proceedings in both houses of parliament were adjourned yesterday as opposition members insisted on discussion on various issues, including bribery charges related to the Adani group and the violence in the Sambhal district. As soon as the house met for the day, many opposition members were on their feet. As some members from the Congress and the Samajwadi Party approached the well and other opposition members stood in the aisle and shouted slogans, Speaker Om Birla requested them for the question hour to be allowed. Amid the ruckus, one question by BJP's Meerut MP Arun Govil was taken up. However, the protest continued and the proceedings, which went on for about 5 minutes, were adjourned until noon. It's important to note that on the 20th of November, US prosecutors alleged that Adani, his nephew and 6 others had paid over $250 million in bribes to Indian government officials to lie to investors and banks, to raise billions of dollars and to obstruct justice. Talking about the allegation, the Congress party yesterday said that the Modi-Adani ecosystem was attempting to dilute the seriousness of the bribery allegations and accused the government of protecting the businessman. The party demanded that the allegations against Adani be discussed in detail in Parliament and investigative agencies as well as SEBI impartially probe these charges. Speaking to the reporters outside the Parliament, Rahul Gandhi, the leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, asked why Adani was not in jail when hundreds of people were arrested in the country on tiny charges.
Which world are you living in, brother? Obviously he's going to deny the charges. The point is he has to be arrested. The point is he has to be arrested, as we have said. Hundreds of people are being arrested on tiny charges. The gentleman has been indicted in the United States for thousands of crores. He should be in jail.
Rahulji, JP,
and the government, please let me speak. And the government is protecting him.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Ichha, Sharma and me, Shashank, Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.